Testing 1, 2.
Blah, blah, blah.
To just collect me.
Yeah.
I'm a bit flustered. Yeah, so we're here with the brilliant songwriter John Witherspoon ahead of your album release. It's in about a week's time, or just under a week, right?
Friday the 9th next week, yeah.
Right, oh, so you've got the gig coming up on the 6th, which is just beforehand.
Yeah.
So the first question, head in, heart out. Could you speak a little bit about the title?
It's just a line from the first track, which is a song called I Wish I'd Tried. The first album was called Showing Up, Starting Again. I took that line from a song called Sad and Beautiful, which I didn't particularly love actually, but it was my favourite line across the whole album. The second one felt in a lot of ways like a sequel. Almost every song on this new album, I feel like my songs, I don't know if other songwriters feel the same, but I like, it's like a picture like a family tree, and you can go, I know exactly, this song is like a cousin of so-and-so on that first album, whether that's like a tempo thing or just a certain aspect of the sound. And I feel like this album, I can trace every song that on it. I think, I wrote that because I wrote the one on the first album, but this is, I would hope, better, more mature, and anyway, long story short, I thought I'll go by the same logic and I'll try and find a line that I really like, and this one just so happens to be one of the first lines on the record, which is I never got started, that wore me down, I couldn't put the heart in, couldn't get the head out, so, and I just took that and thought, heart in, head out, sounds a bit like Showing Up, Starting Again.
Right, yeah, no, there's a bit of a symmetry to
and I feel like it's like I've made a sequel, like I've made part 2.
Right, so...
Not necessarily in a concept way or with themes, but...
Yeah, well, as a sophomore album, building off the first one while taking some of the thematic kind of through lines and kind of like letting them develop in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, it's similar in the sense that it's personal, there's family stuff on there, it's all just about, and it's all about specifics and absolute truth.
So the album itself, in terms of the track list, is there a kind of conscious journey that you're going to be taking the listener on? Is there like any like through line narrative or sense of momentum that you've consciously constructed for it?
There was at least a lot of obsessing over the sequencing of it, and I had it, and then I changed it quite late because in the end I thought, which of these studio tracks do I think are the best? And I took the ones that I thought were the best and made them top heavy.
Right. Yeah, you want to have some big hitters going.
Yeah, I just thought, and they're all great. Like I should add. I'm really pleased with what we did it at the Cabin again with Alec Britz, who's a marvellous producer, marvellous drummer. So we've done 2 albums together now, and it's all great. But in the end, I made that kind of decision to just think, well, which ones are my favourites in terms of the sound? So then I feel good about the listener's journey in terms of what they're getting. But it's weird now because I've listened to it a couple of times in the final sequence, and I'm expecting another song to come on.
Right.
Maybe I should have stuck to my initial plan because I felt like I had it. But you know what? Doesn't really matter either. Shouldn't do. You shouldn't be saying, oh well, I'll stick this one towards the end because it's filler. I don't think any of them are filler. Right,
but there's certain ones that you'd think of more as like the singles or the attention grabbers, because you've got different tempos and moods that you want to
absolutely, it gets, there's and some are just, some I feel like I knew Wish I'd Tried would be the first one, for example. I don't know why, and it's always the first one live with the band. Don't know why. It just feels like that kind of song.
So are there any key influences musically or otherwise that contribute towards the project?
Yeah, mine have been sort of unchanging for a while, I would say. The go-to line about influences is always that I've got a big 3, which is Dylan, Paul Simon and the Beatles. and you know, I do like a lot of other music, but it wasn't like with this album that I'd gone away and listened to something different. And it,
Right.
to be honest, I do think that for whatever album 3 is going to be, I do feel like I need a new toolbox now. I need to shake it up somehow, because that's why I feel like this is almost like part 1, part 2. I've exhausted my chords almost. That's how it feels, which is that's probably nonsense, but I feel it feels like the end of a certain thing with this now, where I'm like, okay, I can't just keep knocking around in the key of G anymore, or whatever. It's something like that.
Is it like is there a sense of catharsis, or like you say, you know, you're coming to the end of this? Is it like, do you feel like you've nailed that sound with this, where you, like you've really you've like, you know, because you've been going after the same type of maybe vibe or feeling from these influences? Do you feel like you've really been able to like get into a groove with and be happy with the content you've created with it? Like,
yeah, and I'm probably in like a bit of a sort of worrying place where you're like, oh, I've got to top it, got to top myself, because I've top myself. But I still feel that the ones that I really like, I still feel that sense of, I'm not sure I'll do better, which is not true. I know that. It's like, that's not how writers should think, and it's not how writing works.
Right, I think a lot of people say that after they've completed an album. It's like, where do I even go from here?
Yeah.
I've just emptied myself into this project, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a common kind of belief with a lot of artists, not just musicians. Right?
And as ever, I've taken too long to put it out, so it might be a new album, but they very much don't feel like new songs to me. So it's like catharsis, yes, massively so. It's just I'm going to be really relieved to just go, okay, retreat a little bit and stop talking about the new album that's coming out, because it's done, it's out.
How would you say this differs from your previous album? And like, you know, kind of touched on it, like, have you added any new strings to your bow or like, how have you developed as a songwriter, do you think, since your previous project?
I think the main thing I did was go the other way, and it's more concise and it's leaner, and the tracks are shorter.
Right.
I realised after the first album, in time, I was like, okay, almost every song's got a guitar solo, you know, and by the time I got to do this one, I was just really interested in like being as lean as possible. I remember playing with a covers band in 2019, so the album number 1 was already done, and we played Nowhere Man by the Beatles, and I remember thinking, that is the leanest piece of songwriting. It's got no fat on it. It's just bounces from section to section, and there's no flab. There's no indulgence. So a guitar solo is kind of an indulgence. I love guitar solos. Like, I used to be into Pink Floyd massively, and it was all. I loved how it took its time for 10 minutes over a David Gilmour solo.
Right.
But maybe not so much anymore. I'm really proud of how several of these songs are literally 2 minutes something.
Right.
And you get in and you get out, and it does what it does, and it's over. And I mean, I feel like that's a good thing as well in this day and age. If you've got short songs, you know, if you want people to get through the album, you know, the album's probably, I think, 37, 38 minutes long, and most tracks are barely over 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Some are, but and we scaled it down in terms of the people involved. So I mean, the first album, it wasn't like we had 20 musicians we put tracking, but we had more than this. And then this album is me, as I say, Alec, who produced and played the drums and percussion, and Craig Walsh on bass, Henry Burnett keys. And I think that's it. A bit of strings that we did remotely later with other people. That's it. So it just feels like it was a small room with barely 5 people, and maybe there's more sophistication in the craft of the songwriting. I don't know, but mostly it feels like I've matured in the sense of less indulgence, try and be concise. That's what I feel good about with this one.
So I noticed that you draw a lot from the people around you in your life, and they find a way into your songs. Like, you have a knack for immortalising some of your friends and family with really heartfelt tributes, and sometimes like character studies. Do you find that you thrive off of that, or you need like a real world grounding for your songs to make them feel like real and personal?
I just don't think I'm good at abstract or it's the only way I know how to do it. You take something that moves you in your real life that's true and try and write about it.
Right.
Again, I do feel like I'm reaching a point where I don't, because you can't go into it thinking, who's next on my list, because this is a working formula.
Right, yeah. No,
I probably have been guilty of that already.
So.
There's still songs, in the last, I haven't written much, but I wrote a song called Sebastian, it's about my nephew, and I like it, pretty good song, but I only did it because it's like, right, well, that works for me.
You know how to do that.
Yeah. Yes, there is a formula to it, because I'll just scribble about what I really think, and then Tetris it down, whittle it down to something that works in a song. But I don't want to be that guy forever, because it's weird, and also it genuinely is not what it's cracked up to be. Going, here's a song I wrote for you. You won't always be pleased.
Right? Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a way of writing lyrics that make me reflect on my own life. Like in Christopher's Heart, you say, speaking with him is speaking bad of no one, right? And which really made me reflect on all the times I've talked someone else down in private to maybe boost my own ego, and I think that's what great art does. It makes you reflect on yourself. I mean, is that a conscious effort that you will kind of like try to find these truths that will speak to people?
Yeah, I mean, not again. I don't think you could go into it going, here's a universal bit. Here's a bit they'll all understand. Like,
right.
You couldn't. I'm trying not to be like conceited with any of it. I'm trying not to. It's just I'm just brainstorming in that song of what would be a good Chris memory to put in this song.
Right. It's just authentic.
And so what leads to that is, I got in trouble for the big phone bill in ours, which is a true story.
It's a great line.
Yeah, well, we had the landline, and it's true. I still remember his phone number, 6382478.
Right.
And we did, for some reason in primary school or the early years of secondary school, talk on the phone every night. And my dad, I remember my dad having, looking at the bill and going, kicking off. So that leads to the next line, which is speaking with him, was speaking bad of no one, which is just, I don't know. I think I try and do that as well. It's just a flowing one line. It has to lead nicely into the next. But certainly no, there was no like. I mean, you write one down, and if it feels moving, it feels good. Yeah, you're like, oh, okay, that should. And rolling off the tongue is important to me. Like it's. I think a lot of people, when they sing their songs, you hear the words on a page that are clunky when they are sung out loud.
I mean, yeah, well, let's not speak bad of no one, shall we?
Yeah, and by the way, I do too, and I shouldn't. And Chris really doesn't speak bad of anyone,
right.
So that's another truth.
Well, I mean, I really do mean that. Like, that line hit me in a way that made me really kind of think, well, I can't say that about myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a quality that I'd like to have. It made me think, well, maybe I have to change my ways a little bit, and I've consciously tried to kind of change myself because of that. I mean, that's what good art does, right?
Well, I'm delighted with that. Yeah, and I should too, and yeah.
Right. I mean, I've never heard you speak bad behind anyone's back, so I mean, I think it's something that you've took to heart as well, that you've learned from him, which is a real kind of. It's real. Like,
I think you catch yourself doing it, don't you? And you feel bad about it later on. And I think bitching is only ever because you haven't got the balls to address your problem with somebody. So you try and make some allies.
It just comes out of some insecurity, right? But you've got another one about. You got a song about a fella you'd come into the coffee shop that you worked in,
Yeah.
and I always liked that. I mean, it was such an interesting character study in itself as well. I'm not sure, is that on this album? Is it?
Lockdown John. Yes.
Right, that's on
Yeah.
this one, yeah.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, with that, you know, you can go into it as much as you like, but I mean, that was another one I heard you play it, and it's a really interesting, like, song that makes you reflect, because even if you're not like this person, you will have encountered people like this.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you think about life and, you know, how different people are, and like, you know, how can you relate to someone even if they're a lot different from you, and like find the humanity and the humour in the you know, the little things, you know.
Yeah. That was just, again, you know, I think I just know that if you are truthful, I said this in an interview about the first album, so yeah, nothing's changed. If you are truthful, people will latch onto it, because we're all going through the same stuff.
Right. It's easy to relate to something that happened to someone. Or
yeah,
like that.
It shouldn't be a well-kept secret, should it? This is true, this thing. You know what I mean? Of course, maybe that's, hopefully, that's only part of it, or everyone would do it. Like, you know, maybe I have a way of just turning it into a catchy thing,
right,
as well, and something that rolls off the tongue. But again, no, I mean,
and like
just
you say,
completely true. Every line I can explain its truth to you.
Right, and then even like you said earlier about like you know, boiling something down to its raw components. Like you say, like a good line is a good line, but putting them together into a good, concise story that's true is its own. You know, I feel like a lot of your songs have that quality to them where they're, you know, you can in the shortest amount of words really get your point across, you know.
Well, that's the fun bit, is I'll always start by either doing a brainstorm in literally the way you do a brainstorm in school, with a circle in the middle and like a spider's legs, and just try and write down everything that I think might be worth singing about. Or I'll just start scribbling on an A4 page, you know, so just, you know, what is my Lockdown John story, you know, and I'm trying to, and so that's paragraphs and paragraphs, and then I guess you've been noodling and hollering a melody. So then it's just a game of, okay, well, maybe you might have your first rhyming sound. So then it's just, okay, I have line one, or I have something that sounds like it's right in the middle. And you think you won't be able to get in all this pertinent information. You're like,
right.
Well, I can't. But it's amazing what you can squeeze in. Because you'll start thinking, well, I have precisely this many syllables in this line, and it continues to surprise me, where you go, I can't believe I managed to whittle that down into something that's I'm really pleased with. Yeah.
In speaking in the, you know, these personal kind of character studies, or the way in which you write, you know, some songwriters might take a completely opposite approach and construct entirely fictional premises and characters in their work. Mm-hmm. What's your view on that? And could we ever expect like a left turn from yourself to go in a completely opposite direction?
Well, I did it once in a song called Sweetie Pie,
right, on
the first album, and it bugs me that I'm like, I did it once, so what's wrong? It's a fictional tale,
right.
But it was really about that I wanted to write something. It became that I wanted to write something about, you know, knife crime in Liverpool, because you just couldn't move for news stories about lads dying in the middle of the night on, you know, Concert Square. So it became that quite quickly, but that's complete fiction, and and I admire it. You know, I love Springsteen, and he's just always inhabiting other characters. He's very rarely just going, this is me, this is my song about Bruce. He's someone else in the song. Well, kind of like I said before, I might have to start trying, because I want to start mixing it up. I don't actually want to be pigeonholed as the guy who writes about friends and family, so watch out. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I also, like, me and Lawrence were talking earlier about songs that are great, but you can't quite put your finger on what it's about.
Yeah, it's just like kind of like just drawing from anywhere.
Yeah.
And then, like, there might be two different lines that are completely unrelated, but have some tangential relation, you know, or like, well, you know,
coming from the subconscious.
Right,
You know, we see songwriters in here, like, you know, I think Liam Sweeney is genuinely, like, writes from the subconscious, and you say, what's that about, Liam? And he goes, I don't know, it just...
Right.
And that's real songwriting, that I think that's just come from a place, and you're not sure. And I've got a couple of songs like that. I've got a song called Apollo, where I'm like, maybe I was onto something. It was the end of the batch, and I wrote a song called Apollo, and I thought, I like where I'm going here, because that was my song, that was my moment of, I'm not quite sure where this came from, but I just went with it, kind of thing. And I was saying to Lawrence, like, also maybe the challenge would be if you're writing a song about, because I do a lot of speaking bad of people, but like, no, like, if I'm like journaling, I'll do a lot of venting with it, like that's how I'll try and be like, I'm angry about this or this person. And I thought, well, if you were trying to write a song about someone that you were pissed off with, maybe you could get away with it because they wouldn't know it's about them. If you're specific as I am in some of these songs, you're not
they'd know, they'd work it out, right?
So you wouldn't, almost in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'd like to write about that, but I wouldn't want them to know it was them.
You know what my technique for that is? If I'm writing a song about someone I don't like, I'll write it as if I'm from their perspective.
Oh, okay.
So like, there's certain songs that I wouldn't reveal what songs of mine, but there's songs where, like, 'cause a lot of my songs are kind of self-reflective and kind of maybe even like you know, self-detrimental. But if I put myself in someone else's mind, I can do that to them in a weird kind of other way, you know, where like, but pretend it's me or something, and it's my way of empathizing with them. I don't know, you know, like
it's just, I think that's what you got to do, isn't it? It's like set little new challenges for yourself, and
or different ways of approaching a song.
Yeah, because there's absolutely no handbook to it. There's no rules, and if you start thinking of it in terms of formula, like, I'm still skeptical about, like, let's get together for a co-write and people going, so what's this about? Because you tell me and I can help you. You know, is it about a breakup? Okay, I'll help you with that. Like, that's not going to work for me, I think. Yeah, but yeah, certainly I want to try different things. I want to set challenges for myself. I mean, I've got a new song called Bella, which was a new thing for me because it was written to a brief about someone saying, please, can you write this song? Which is a long story, and I don't necessarily need to get into it.
Well, we could if we might get there, but I just want to ask you about this project in particular. Do you have a song or two maybe that you would consider the most indicative of the project as a whole?
I don't know. I'm struggling to think. I can only think of that in terms of, like, what's my favourite one.
Well, that was the next question. What's your favourite?
Yeah. Well, I mean, at Christopher's Heart, I've got a soft spot for, because I think it's just concise.
Was that from this album?
Christopher's Heart is going to be on the new
album.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
I thought that was on. Oh, good. No, I thought that was on the last one, right?
No. That's
right. No, I love that. I love that. You've done a live performance of that. That blew me away. Here, sitting right here.
Oh well. You're coming to see us with the band next week.
Yeah,
so,
I'll be there.
That's one of my favourites with the band as well. So
and I've seen you play both with the guitar and with the piano, and I think you said you wrote that on the piano, did you?
Yeah, I did a lot of them on the piano actually, and then, or at least got started on the piano and got the bulk of it done, and then so I mean, but I'm proud of them all. I am. Yeah, I'm it feels different now. As to when they were freshly written. So excited then to get it out. I think another thing I want to learn from is, like, I think really the quicker you can turn it around now, the better as well. Get it recorded and get it out.
Yeah.
Because that's clearly the people I love. That's clearly how it used to work. That's clearly what is most healthy for an artist to do.
Right.
So I just don't understand why I let it drag on for 2.5 years instead.
Right. I mean, speaking of Dylan, I mean, he'd put out 2 projects in a year sometimes. So, I mean, it depends on your creative output, but
yeah, like, and your money and your budget and all that, and how you want to record. I get all that, but I said it last time, but I'm determined to learn from that now, because my relationship to the songs is extremely different now than it was when you were like, I've got new songs and they're coming thick and fast, and like, not to talk it down. Yeah, I'm super proud and like the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of playing these songs live, like with the recording process and what have you, are there any songs that you think benefit most from having the full band like you'll have next week? But I know a lot of your songs come together either just on a piano or on a guitar, and there's an old saying that a song should be able to stand up with just an acoustic guitar, but obviously depending on the song and some production heavy elements, what's your approach to this when tracking in the studio?
Well, yeah, I do kind of generally have a band sound on my stuff, basic but band sound, bass, drums, lead guitar, piano, just your kind of raw materials of traditional rock. The answer really is I love both now. I always, before I had the band, always thought this will be, not until I have a band will I feel great about this. And now I've done that, it's somehow given me a new appreciation for turning up and doing a solo gig as well. Don't know why, but like I've loved like some sort of support slots where I've just been acoustic now. So I love both setups equally. I'd love to do like a tour with the band. See, that's just not really come close to happening for me, but because I feel like I'd love to see how strong that could get and how much more confident and settled I could get, because I don't do enough band gigs, and every time I do it's like a bit of a novelty. Right. It's not really that I'm nervous, but I have struggled on some gigs with some sort of self-sabotage problem of letting it pass me by and not relaxing into it.
Being in the moment and enjoying
missing it somehow.
Yeah.
And someone says, how was it? And you go, oh, damn, I think I forgot to enjoy it actually.
Yeah, right.
But no, they're brilliant players, and I'm really excited for next week. And
Right, so speaking of next week, you've got an album launch on the 6th of June, and what can your fans expect to see on the night? Like, you'll have the band with you, and how many of the songs do you expect to play from the album?
Well, we'll do a good hour, so it's almost all of the songs off the new album and plenty off the first. Yes, it's not a good answer, but you'll get exactly what you've had the last few times if you've seen the band before. But that's because it's the album launch, innit? You've got to
yeah,
you can't be going. Here's
songs
4
on the album,
brand new ones, yeah. So
yeah,
no, it'd be good fun, and you see, we're only doing a couple of quick rehearsals as well, because they're great players and they know it all so well that we can go in quite loose and just enjoy ourselves, hopefully. Yeah.
So we're here in the Belvedere pub where you've been hosting what's become a really special open mic night of a Thursday, and we've got a group of talented musicians lining up outside the door right now because we've got a little bit over time. But could you talk a little bit about how this event maybe has shaped you as a musician or changed your approach in any way to songwriting or inspired your creative process?
It's been great because I didn't seek it out, getting involved with hosting open mics. It just happened by accident, and there was full-time music at the time, so you go, yes please, if it's paid, yes. So, but I was very anxious for a long time every time I did it, and felt like it's not my forte, I'm not a host, I'd rather just be one of the people who turns up and sit quietly if I feel like being quiet or whatever. I still feel like that sometimes now, but in general it did help me in a big way. I don't know, I guess just to be a better people person, a better friend to musicians, and feel like my circle of friends just grew and grew and grew. And the main reason that's great is people started coming to gigs. So I think really it's as simple as, like, I'm not saying try and win friends to grow your fan base, but really it's one and the same thing.
Right.
Know people, therefore, you know what I mean?
I think there's a knock-on effect, right? Because you can really feel it when you're promoting this open mic in particular. When you're talking about it, if you're doing a promotional post, you're talking about the songs staying with you when you go home the next day. You get up
Definitely,
the next day,
you
and
do.
and you like, you know, you're taking them with you, and then it can't help rub off, and then you can't help but rub off on everyone else, and your music can't help but influence. You know, this is the first night I ever played anywhere, and you know, I feel like there's so many other people who have that same type of interaction with you, where, you know, you've been such a great help, and then your music is an inspiration to us as well. You know?
That's great to hear, and and that's the other part of the answer. Obviously, is just everyone inspires me too. I think the open mic scene in Liverpool is great. It's way better than I've seen it at times in the last 10-15 years. Everybody supports everybody flocks together and turns up here, there and everywhere. People are singing each other's songs. That never used to happen.
Can you talk a little bit about how this unplugged open mic started?
I turned up here with all the gear. Didn't know how tiny the room was, so I turned up with PA, and great musician we know called Guy was playing, and in the middle of his set we had a big power cut all around this, maybe
the entire block.
Yeah, like maybe for like half a mile or so, and everyone was gone. So we just carried on. We lit candles and stuff, and we carried on the night. And then very quickly, I thought, well, we didn't need all the speakers in the first place.
Right.
So it became like a completely unplugged night. That's
and then with the candles and the intimate room and the set, and it's just become it's took on its own life, right? And you know, just I had a great 1 year anniversary just a couple of weeks ago, and you know, we've got the musicians lining up around the corner to get in the room.
I'm getting edgy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, last question. Like, what sort of trajectory do you find yourself on now, coming out of this project? You know, have you come out of it any different? And we've touched on it a bit, but like, moving forward, how do you feel?
I want to just completely relax about it and actually back off a little bit in terms of my originals game. I don't want to be on social media. I want to be at home playing the piano, playing the guitar, and hopefully writing new songs and doing it in a completely old school way, a focused way, alone. Because I know that you got to give it that time, or I don't know, if you get in, I'm just so terrified of getting lost in the admin and the social media. It ain't gonna happen to me because I don't know how anyone's writing good songs and staying completely locked in on that, and I don't believe in it. In fact, I hate it.
Right. And that, you know, just to end on the one last thing that we are going to end on, like putting this interview together, you know, you're a bit reluctant to put any promotional material, or kind of a bit deflated in regards to it. Is that because, you know, we kind of touched on it before we started recording, the two different sides of not just being a musician but having to be a promoter and be a kind of like a social media.
At the moment, I don't have it in me.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to play.
Focus on your craft.
Yeah. And then what'll be will be. I just feel at the moment I don't have the energy for the other stuff. And there's no sympathy for people anymore. As I say, it is just like, no, you've got to do it. You've got to do it all yourself. And good on anyone who's having a go. But I think we're all spreading ourselves too thin if you're trying to spin all those plates at once. Yeah.
Well, we'll leave it there, John. That was, you know, thanks for talking to me. And I can't wait to hear the album. Can't wait to be at the gig on the 6th of June. Get yourself there. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, mate. Thanks again.
Okay.